I have to show you something I heard, knocked me over. Heard on the ABC this morning before I talked to Greg Sheridan. To me, it symbolises so much that is wrong with this country, particularly our defence. I mean, politics and ideology put above hard-headed, practical reality. Now, Defence Minister Richard Marles was on the ABC this morning when he was asked about, of all things, the government's crazy new law banning bosses from pestering workers at home with emails and calls about work. It's the so-called right to disconnect. Listen to his response when he was asked if this new right also applies to people that we pay to keep this country safe day and night from threats like war and terrorism.
When we look at the public service, the civilians in the Department of Defence, do they have a right to disconnect?
People in defence do have a right to have periods where they are not on call, and it is obviously national security is something which happens around the clock. But if you want to get the best out of people, you need to give people an opportunity to have time where it is their time and they're not on call. And so the answer to that question is yes.
Joining me is the country's top foreign affairs writer, Greg Sheridan, in the Australian newspaper. Greg, the good news about that is that China now knows it must attack us between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Otherwise, people have knocked off and they can't be called.
Well, Andrew, these comments are so barking mad as they're almost indecipherable. I mean, God alone knows what he's talking about. 2 points. One, the government's industrial relations changes are buggering up the whole economy everywhere. You know, there's going to be no productivity revolution from people working at home. And secondly, already federal public servants, especially those who live in Canberra with no traffic jams and all the rest, have amongst the most cosseted, lovely conditions you could possibly imagine: above average pay, a squillion types of leave, carers leave and sick leave and mental health leave and gender dysphoria leave and anything else you like. The idea that they need a new right to disconnect from the government, which they, you know, connect with 37 hours a week, unless, of course, they've got real responsibilities, in which case they're always connected. God, sometimes I just can't follow what the Albanese government is on about.
It's just, he knew that he had to defend the policy, but national security. I mean, it's just, our commandos now too, you can't pass. I mean, really. And you mentioned the leave. There's now the unions are pushing for 10 days of reproductive leave, like for a vasectomy or something like that. You wonder who's going to be ending up doing the work, you and me and maybe a few of our friends. Greg, I was worried about this unreality. Normally, ASEAN, right, these meetings of the Asian leaders, we're holding them here. The Prime Minister's hosting them over 2 days in Melbourne. And I thought we were all on the same page with China. But then along comes a Malaysian Prime Minister, who I used to, years and years ago, rate relatively highly. He said China was not his problems, it was just ours, and we shouldn't push it onto him. Here he is.
And if they have problems with China, they should not impose it upon us. We do not have a problem with China.
Hey?
Well, look, I must say I've known Anwar for many, many decades, and he is a very estimable guy. But Malaysia blows hot and cold on China. They're exactly the way Tony Abbott described Australia. They have a mixture of fear and greed in relation to China. Plus, their Islamic politics means they want to distance themselves a bit from the US. But ASEAN itself is fabulously divided internally. Three of its states, Cambodia, Laos and Myanmar, are basically Chinese strategic clients. Two of its nations, Philippines and Thailand, are military allies of the US. Singapore is super hard-headed and doing everything it can to keep the US there. Indonesia is dedicatedly non-aligned, but every now and again persecutes its ethnic Chinese minority, but tries to make a lot of money out of China. Malaysia itself has today laws which discriminate against ethnic Chinese and ethnic Indonesians and in favour of ethnic Malays. What none of them wants is for Australia to go soft or become neutral. And of course, Anwar's comments are in great contrast, great contradiction to the Philippines' comments. And at least...
Let's have a listen to the President of the Philippines. He had a very different take about a week ago.
I will not allow any attempt by any foreign power to take even 1 square inch of our sovereign territory. The challenges that we face may be formidable, but equally formidable is our resolve. We will not yield.
And let's not forget, Greg, in your rundown, Vietnam was one of the latest countries to have gone to war with China after China invaded it. So ASEAN, are they our friends in this confrontation with China or not?
Overall, they're our friends, but in their own special way. And the great thing about both Marcos and Anwar there is they said coherent things which were intelligible, unlike our government. In response to both of them, Albanese kind of cleared his throat and said nothing. And they don't want us to clear our throat and said nothing. They don't want us to pretend that we are Southeast Asians. You know, Lee Kuan Yew in his memoirs, he derided Gough Whitlam as a sham white Afro-Asian. That's what you end up looking like if you try that. They want us to be. And here's a tip, Andrew. They already know. Yeah, they already know that we are strategic allies of the United States. Guess what? Somebody told them the secret's out. And they also know we have a lot of problems with China's strategic behaviour. Mike Burgess gave that fine speech pointing that out.
You mentioned Mike Burgess, right, the head of ASIO. I'm surprised. There is an air of naivety in Australia about how serious and dangerous the world really is, you know. So in a way, I wasn't surprised to hear the boss of ASIO, Mike Burgess, actually warn last week that one country had a team of spies working in Australia and had got a politician here to be a traitor to this country. Here he is.
In terms of this former politician, were they recruited or did some of this concerning activity happen while they were in Parliament?
The activity, so former politician now, the matter is resolved, but this happened when they were a politician.
It happened when they were in a Parliament in Australia?
Correct.
And was it the federal Parliament?
I won't comment on which Parliament it was. What I will say is foreign interference against the political system happens at all levels of government, local, state and federal, and applies itself equally across all political parties.
Now, it's just been reported that the country involved is China, big surprise, but the name of the MP is still not revealed, should it be?
No, Andrew, I disagree with all my colleagues whom I love and admire in the press. Of course, we all want disclosure in the press, and if I find out the name, I'll put it on the front page. But I think what Mike Burgess has done here is very sophisticated. ASIO collects intelligence, not legal evidence. Actionable intelligence may still not be fit for a court. If you reveal the guy's name, he'll say, I'm innocent. If I'm guilty, try me in a court. And they probably don't have evidence. They don't want to compromise their sources, all the rest of it. But look what Burgess has achieved here. We are having a national discussion about Chinese political interference in Australia. The Chinese have been put on a notice, the community has been put on notice, and politicians have been put on notice that ASIO is alive to this and aware of it. Now, you know, I think in the messy compromises of reality, I think that's a big net positive that Mike Burgess has given us.
I think you make an excellent point, Greg. It just sticks in the craw to think that some traitor is getting away with it. That's the only thing. But ASIO's on his tail, and hope he'll, or she, hope he'll sleep uneasy. Greg Sheridan, thank you
Thanks, Andrew.
so much for your time.